said is extremely encouraging. This is the first African standardization function, at least for our case in this country. And what does this mean? It means the continent has started embracing standards. Something that we could not have said we were proud of a decade or so before. As we all know, we now continue to intensely rely on product standards. And when you look at the current consumer, is really emphasizing standards. We have even gone ahead and put in place a Consumer Protection Act. So you can see how serious we have become in this area. And we happen to be one of those regions where we are having a rapidly growing middle income group, which means the tastes are definitely changing, going more for quality for most of the products that they want to be associated with. And when I look at this year's theme, the role of standards in promoting sustainable agriculture and food security in Africa, I think it's even much more relevant in our case, given our agricultural background. Look at it this way. In 2050, we'll expect a population of 9 billion in the world. We will expect an increase in food production by 70%. And I'm saying this because we have a very unique opportunity to contribute to this food demand by 2050. And this is the time to position ourselves. When we talk of the 1 million acres in the Galana, maybe some people are saying maybe that is too far-fetched. But look at it this way. If we are going to be a serious food hub for the region, then we have a market. Look at the infrastructure that we are putting in place. We have relatively good agricultural infrastructure already. Look at the road network that continues to improve daily. What the chairman alluded to, the standard gauge railway that is going to touch on everybody's life in this region. Don't you think then this is the time to see whatever it takes to make it possible for the coast region to be a very serious food hub for the region? That's why I say I really like the theme of today's function. We are now embracing agro-processing, value addition. We want to do this not just for ourselves, but to see it in the context of exporting the surplus. As alluded to earlier by my previous speakers, standards facilitate trade. And look at the initiatives we have put in the integration. The East African Community, 150 million. The COMESA region, putting together the 400 million. The market now is there. And the winner is going to be the one that embraces standards most. Because most of the products to be able to move from point A to point B will be on demand, and this demand will go with standards. And that's why I think probably one of the things that we have continued to do right is to always remember that the Kenya Bureau of Standards is an important institution, and it must be let to run. It must be left to be innovative. It must be able to provide services efficiently. So when we were being given the latest way of accessing some of the information on the services that KEBS is able to give, I'm happy to note that they are using that available technology that we have, using the mobile phone to be able to know whether this product is in the market and branded as appropriate and meeting the standards as expected. When it comes to protecting the consumer interest, I think this is critical in the sense that we want to make available these products knowing very well they are meeting the food safety standards, for example, to the consumers. And this will not just come easy. We must be able to look at the entire value chain and who is involved in the production process, who's involved in the processing, who's involved in the marketing, and how can they contribute to this process to make sure that the chain is as efficient as possible. This will require a lot of capacity building along the value chain. And when I look at the congregation here today and those stakeholders celebrating here, I see we have left no one out. Even the juakali that we used to put in the periphery is sitting very pretty here. And they are happy these days because we realize that we really need to put everybody on board to be able to be efficient in the way we do our business. As I was sitting there, I definitely was also getting some areas that we need to do better. Definitely when it comes to technology development, we are going to involve the micro and small enterprises a little more so that we appreciate the areas they continue to have constraints and how we can support them. Our institutions are going to link better to make sure that the innovations that are becoming available are accessed by all those that should be able to benefit from them. When it comes to the consumer protection, I think this will need to take on board capacity building that is also sensitive to the consumers. I was happy when Dr. Nzingimana mentioned here that I don't think we have really embraced biotechnology appropriately, and probably this could be one of the things that has made us remain behind. And with regard to biotechnology, I believe probably I contributed to this in a way because I was in the agricultural sector for quite some time. But I believe the scientists went a bit too far, leaving behind a number of key stakeholders who should have come along with them. By the time they reached a stage where they now want to introduce the technology, they realize that the end users have no clue about this technology. And this is why even as a ministry now, we have reached a stage where we need to embrace those industries that we know and have done very well in the past and know are good for job creation. But we cannot move as fast because the technology we are using now is not the most appropriate. And probably one of these areas I should mention is the textile industry. We are now in a process of convincing investors that we have what it takes to invest in the textile industry. But then they ask questions. Yes, we agree with you, but shall we access all the technology that goes with this? And one area that we need to move very quickly is the use of BT cotton. We cannot embrace this technology if we are not going to also use the latest technology. So we have to work very fast here to see how we move quickly to make it possible for us to use the latest technology to go with this very important industry, especially for job creation. I think when we looked at in summary, what standards are used for, I remember the MD also mentioning the need to protect our environment. If there's anything that must go with our agricultural production is to ensure sustainability. And therefore, we will need standards to ensure that we protect our environment. And I'm happy that we are quite informed on our rights when it comes to the environment. As a ministry now, we are in the process of trying to see how we develop a leather city not very far from Athi River at Kenani. But we were amazed with the input of the local community. Fine, your story seems to be convincing, but please ensure the technology you use must be the current technology that will ensure the community does not suffer. And they clearly pointed out on the technology to use for the effluent treatment that goes with a tannery-based leather industry. So this just goes to show how we have become informed, and therefore the need for the standards, to maintain certain standards so that we sustain the standards that we know are going to be consistent for an economy like ours that seems that is now growing rapidly and also encouraging other investors to come in. For now, ladies and gentlemen, what we are seeing, when we look at whatever rating it is, you will realize that we are now more or less in the single-digit margin when it comes to the region and the continent. And this has not just come. This is because we are beginning to implement our programs in a manner that is assuring sustainability, in a manner that is ensuring the plans are futuristic, in a manner that is showing that we have a young population that requires, first and foremost, jobs. Ladies and gentlemen, when we look at the region, we are probably having the most vibrant young population that is educated, with a diversity of skills. And this, we must make sure we put plans in place to ensure that this population will contribute to our economic development. And that's why probably I feel my ministry is in the center of this, to make sure that manufacturing, our manufacturing potential is realized. And this is not going to be possible without putting the necessary institutions in place. And one of the key institutions in this is our Kenya Bureau of Standards. So, Bwana MD, wherever I am, I know how I get my performance contract addressed. So, Bwana Chairman, you will expect me to live wherever I am. If it is not going to contributing more, I'll come to where my performance contract is being addressed. So it was going to be difficult for me to miss this celebration. When it comes to the EAC region, again, ladies and gentlemen, KEBS has continued to give guidance. This is something that we must be proud of, because when I look at the standards that you have set, really you are comparing yourself beyond the region. And making sure that you bring along our neighbors so that at the end of the day we have standards that facilitate trade within the region. But you must continue to give the leadership. The Kenya Association of Manufacturers gave a presentation here, and I would like to say that it is with stakeholders like this on board that we shall know we are moving in the right direction. It's not like before that we would sit down and come up with policies and pass them without involving the key stakeholders. At the moment, we are proud of having probably the most vibrant private sector in the region, but this is because of our close working relationship these days with the private sector. And the Kenya Association of Manufacturers are even able to have a meeting every month with the Cabinet Secretary, under the Cabinet Secretary's chairmanship, just to ensure we take in the details of whatever constraints that they may be having to be able to address them in a timely manner. Because we realize it is only through this close collaboration that we are going to make sure that we facilitate our initiatives to be able to contribute more through this manufacturing. This is where the jobs are. This is where we have the highest potential. So when we are having functions like this, our other related institutions like anti-counterfeit, our other institutions like KENAS, we go to the other departments, our Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Service. These institutions work closely together for a very good purpose. To make sure that the support to the industry is as efficient as possible. Our exports in horticulture have been very good because of that close collaboration, and also giving the private sector the leeway to operate and regulate themselves. Probably this is where it worked best in the first instance, in the horticultural sector. And no wonder we are doing so well. So that the public sector just comes there to see how they can make the environment better. So for the Secretary General of ASO, I can assure you, We will continue having you around here as government because we know the importance of standardization. We want to take that leadership in the region and make sure that we do not lose the momentum that we have developed in the last few years, and make sure that we also move along with the rest of the region. And more importantly, ensure that we meet the standards as demanded by the market. We are developing a policy, Buy Kenya, Build Kenya, which is going to address some of the issues that the Secretary General, Dr. Nzingimana, alluded to. But we are not going to expect substandard goods being produced locally and you being forced to buy them. We are going to ensure that we meet the standards. And we are happy that some of the institutions are able to do exactly this. I don't think in a few years we may justify importing, for example, the boots for our army, for our police, the uniforms for our uniformed forces, if we are going to ensure that we embrace these standards and you only qualify to supply if you are meeting those standards. This can be done. We have done very well elsewhere, and we can do that as well. We believe this time round the Buy Kenya, Build Kenya policy can be sold. The other day when I saw another ranking for the region, they said now they were even looking at the beaches. We were still in the top 25. I heard the South Coast is one of the top 25 beaches. When it comes to literacy, ladies and gentlemen, in the continent, we are also sitting pretty. So what is this? When it comes to programs, now we are able to come up with the strategies, and for the first time, if what I've seen in the last 2-3 years is to go by, we are now beginning to implement these strategies ourselves. The quality of the roads are better than they were 10 years ago. And that's why this concept of becoming a regional food hub makes a lot of sense to me. These 9 billion people in 2050 and 70% increase of food that is required. Look at the infrastructure that we are putting in place. I think this is the time to plan, and we have what it takes. So as I finish, ladies and gentlemen, let me also emphasize the need to work together. I think this is one of the ministries where we must get the goodwill of all the other stakeholders. One of our areas that we are addressing is the ease of doing business. And just imagine how many other stakeholders must contribute to that. That's why we must have very good collaboration with our other departments. This enhances the efficiency. And I can see even within our own ministry here, with our close stakeholders, we really must make sure that we fine-tune to make sure that we are much closer than we are, as it was alluded to, that some of the micro and small enterprises feel left out and they are not participating in some of the research or benefit from some of the research investments that we are undertaking. And of course, we must also realize that we are very much in a dynamic environment. Even for the standards that we make, we must also look how we review them so that we keep the leadership. And this definitely will need to, will require that you do some investments in the research and collecting information so that you are able to more precisely address those constraints as we go along. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me once again thank the Standards Council, the committee that managed to put this in place, the support we continue to get from our Secretary General, our stakeholders. This time round, I believe we should be able to see how manufacturing plays a more critical role in the contribution on our economic development. I think the Secretary General did allude to the situation in the whole continent, which is not good. It has been very much consistent. That's the same with us. 11% contribution, 9 to 11% contribution to the GDP is not something that we can be proud of at all. We must see what we must do differently to make sure that this improves. We have the political goodwill because of the potential of manufacturing also contributing to job creation. We all know how many youth are out there without jobs and how this can contribute to that very serious problem that we have now. So once again, thank you very much. And
this is the third African Day of Standardization in Africa. It's the first time to celebrate it in Kenya. We started this in Cameroon, the second one in Rwanda. The third one is at large in all countries on our continent. But in the last few months, the ones that I participated in, I would like first of all to congratulate Kenya Bureau of Standards. This is looking the best. Congratulations. It is an honor to be part of this. Maybe it's because the ARZO is hosted by the Kenya government through Kenya Bureau of Standards. And we are just here next to Hilton in the International Life House. It is very important to mention this because Kenya is among the first countries developed in quality infrastructure. To mention South Africa, to mention Egypt, Kenya, and Ethiopia. Those are the leading countries in Africa in quality infrastructure. This doesn't just go with standards. It goes directly with the trading capacity, the development capacity, which is directly linked to standardization work. If we are talking about trade, it's about the market. Ladies and gentlemen, the African market is potent due to its potential for growth based on prospect of local processing of natural resources such as agricultural products, as what we have seen in different presentations. The emergence of middle-class economies and a shift in focus on the local market. In Africa, we are projecting to have a continental free trade area by 2017. You heard the managing director, Charles Ongwae, talking about East Africa. When the work started, there was like a dream where countries would accept the certification mark among the 5 states. Now we are moving forward. If we don't move with a good pace, the continental free trade area will make us remain behind. We should move with it. Where one day, being 10 years, being 20 years, we can have an African mark. As we have marks at the level of other continents. It's really very, very important for us. Various studies have shown that strategies that do not address the issue of African population and agriculture are bound to fail. To address the need of the continent for the African population growth is expected to grow, while at the same time, dependence in agriculture is expected to double. According to a report from UNICEF, almost 2 billion babies will be born in Africa in the next 35 years. That is not just babies, it's the market. How are we going to feed those 2 billion in the next 35 years? When you talk about 35 years, you may think that is far, but it's not far. Remember yourself when you were still at high school. And now, remember, look where you are. It's near future, and we should position ourselves because that is the market. A large productivity gap separates farmers in Africa from their counterparts in the rest of the world. You saw the data on the share of the market. The unacceptable reality is that too many African farmers still use methods handed from generation to generation, working their lands or grazing their animals much as their ancestors have done for millennia. Closing that gap would support growth, reduce poverty, and enhance food and nutritional security. Strategies that are expected to increase food production and security should be of great importance to the African governments. If Africa's farmers increase their productivity and substituted these imports with their own produce, this would provide a powerful impetus to reducing poverty, enhancing food and nutrition security, and supporting a more inclusive pattern of growth. Ladies and gentlemen, globally, farmers are putting trust in biotechnology and precision farming. You heard what Charles said. How are we prepared to embrace the technology? It doesn't mean we don't have experts, but we should do more. It doesn't mean we should forget this will take over the market. What we should do is to see how, once this is accepted at the level of the globalization market, we should be in a position to say it's good or bad. We have different estimates. FAO estimates that by 2030, about 75% of the projected growth in crop production in sub-Saharan Africa will come from intensification in the form of yield increase, which will be 62% on high cropping. These are statistics. They say data don't lie, but if you do nothing, they lie. You just say we are growing in books, but if you don't continue to grow, the data will again go down. That's why the data don't lie, because they will go up by projection and go down by reality. We should do more. If they say that, I saw the focus, like on the issue of SMEs, the problems that they face, they are not just current problems. They are problems that have been there. How do I address this problem that next year we cannot be having around 10 problems that for SMEs, but reduce them to few? How do we do that? It's good presentation, yes. Yeah. But if SMEs are saying that we are not doing more to help them change their technology, and next year they say the same thing, and the other year the same thing, it will be just presentations. What do we do? It's really important on these different data that are good and make us happy that we are growing, that we start changing. We can start changing by adopting good standardization and conformity assessment regime that will lead to adoption of new cost-efficient technologies in post-harvest processing, in storage, as what we have seen, in value additions, etc. We should also remember that we are bound to WTO agreement. We don't have a choice. It's TBT issues. Yeah. If we don't follow our agreements, yeah, we are failing to our commitments. And the agreement is telling us, use the standards. And the standards are there. It's not about not having them. They are there. But it's probably because in some cases, you find the standard they have become like books. We all went to school where you read nice mathematical equation, and some of us are the ones just using them in practical. Others we just know integral, derivatives, and etc. How can we go and use these standards which are in the library in CAPS? It's very important. It's not about the cost of a standard. It's about looking at how the standard that you bought at a level of around $10, you will produce more using the technology embedded in the standards. That is the value, it's the market. Yeah. On African continent, we fail, we continue blaming one another, public, private, and so on. Others are continuing looking at what you can do in order to grow. I know that Kenya has done a lot, KEBS has done a lot, and the fact is the examples that we saw on the banana crisps and the other products, those are good examples. Those are showcasing for other manufacturers that we should be using those right examples. Probably we need also education in management and business. In a globalized context, a country, trade, performance, and export, sophistication and diversification are critical indicators of its competitiveness. According to 2013 Africa Competitiveness Report, jointly produced by the African Development Bank and the World Bank, the Global Competitiveness Index identifies majority of African countries as among the least competitive in the world and notes that Africa must make headway in many areas in order to set itself on sustainable growth. And the standards can make you compete. It is important to note that the African continent celebrated the 25th Industrialization Day on November 20th, 2015, but Africa's experience with industrialization over the past quarter century has actually been quite disappointing. In 2010, Sub-Saharan Africa average share of manufacturing in the gross domestic product was 10%, remaining unchanged since 1970s. And we still have good data saying we are growing. Why do we have data? It's because we just trade in natural resources. We trade with something that we don't change. But once you trade in natural resources, actually, they don't remain here. We sell them. And slowly, we will lack even those natural resources. It's to have that mind. We should transform our products. Many African countries still find familiarity with products originating from outside Africa that they do with products coming from fellow African countries. While this could be due to the distortions and disorientation arising from the colonial era, it could also be attributed to lack of information on the manufacturing and the production capability with African countries, as well as low standards of quality. You would prefer to buy a shoe from Italy than buying a safari shoe. I remember in the 70s, 80s, where the safari, the boots were all over in East Africa. But today, if you are like me, Secretary General, or MD of CAB, I don't want to say PS, to find you in this boot, safari boot, they will ask you, you don't know Italy has a nice shoe. But it's our market. Good example is Ethiopia. You go to Ethiopia, and why now the bigger industry of leather are going to invest in Ethiopia? They maintain well their market. It's really important that we reverse our thinking. When you go to West African countries and you find the way they dress, you would be amazed. The material, the cotton, is from the West African countries. That's the thinking. If you look at TV on the modeling now in the West countries, actually even the modeling, now they are putting on our materials. But I wonder where those materials are being produced. If it's not probably from Asia or elsewhere, not mentioning the countries. To create awareness on the challenges of industrialization in Africa, also has initiated the Made in Africa Expo to be held alongside the celebration of the African Day of Standardization. Why do we create the Made in Africa Expo? Is due to the low development of our market, the focus on SM. Remember, label is very important. You go to buy a radio, you will remember the radio that your father was saying is the best. You go to buy a TV, you still look for other brand that they told you they were the best, not mentioning the watches and so on. We should create our own label and mobilize and publicize on our labels. We are moving forward. We want every year to celebrate the Africa Day of Standardization with an exhibition on Made in Africa Expo. And we tend to grow from the best, from national to the regional level and to African level. This year there will be an expo in Egypt on, again, Made in Africa Expo, which is scheduled between September and October. And that was the aim, actually, to start preparing our SMEs on Made in Expo. Access also to the services of the Bureau of Standards. That was another objective for this Made in Africa Expo. How can you, during this day, access all the services of Kenya Bureau of Standards? At least get where to register and the process. We will continue negotiating with the Bureau of Standards, actually for industries, to reduce the prices. I saw there is an issue of fees on a new product, to reduce the prices for SMEs participating on this Made in Africa Expo. It pays off for the future. Yeah. It pays off for our industry. It is also known that while governments make policies in trade and investment areas, it is enterprises that trade and invest. It's not government that trade and invest. They are enterprises that are investing. That's the focus of Made in Expo. Ladies and gentlemen, I would not like to close without mentioning that today we will be honoring the winners of ARZO Standardization Program that the Director for Standards in Kenya Bureau of Standards will tell you about. This competition started 3 years ago, and we would like to create an African Youth Forum on standards where we grow our young generation to understand the quality and live by quality. We have also different platforms. We have also Consumer Committee. We have also African Standards in Education, where we have started a program with Catholic University here in Kenya, a diploma on standards, to jointly Kenya Bureau of Standards, ARZO, and Catholic University. We have also a platform for traders. If you want to trade within Africa, we have an African web portal where you can check requirements to trade with different countries in Africa. There is a booth outside that you can check how you can access those facilities. I thank the government of Kenya for continue hosting ARZO through Kenya Bureau of Standards, and the board and the management of the Kenya Bureau of Standards. And I thank all of you for celebrating this day. Thank you very much.
Let me take this opportunity to welcome you to the Africa Day of Standardization. This is the first time we're celebrating this day in Kenya. But it's a very important day, it's a great day. Today, we are here to celebrate and acknowledge the efforts of our colleagues and all those who participate in the development of standards and the benefits that accrue from those standards. The theme of this year's Standardization Day is the role of standards in promoting sustainable agriculture and food security in Africa. And for those of you who are close to one of our last items today, you will know that this was the theme of the essay competition. And later on, we will be seeing some of the winners of that essay competition. Standards are developed for the following reasons. Standards facilitate trade. How do they facilitate trade? They facilitate trade by leveling the playing field. They also facilitate trade by supporting innovation. That's one of the key objectives of standards. The second one is standards protect the consumers from harmful and poor quality goods. And thirdly, we use standards to protect our environment. Standards, as you've seen from the various presentations, have become a key requirement for success in the agricultural sector. We had an excellent presentation from Dr. Gikonyo, from Caro. We had excellent presentations from our other partners. The EU standards are not very different from the standards that we have here, because we all borrow from the same source. We borrow from Codex, we borrow from IEC, we borrow from ISO. So they are actually the same standards. And I'm appealing to our producers, our partners in agriculture, to accept that standards are key. And the moment that is done across the board, I know a number of the large manufacturers actually appreciate this fact, but a number of the smaller SMEs have not appreciated the fact that standards play a key role. And therefore, in their production processes, there are always attempts to take shortcuts. And it's these shortcuts which create problems when it comes to quality, and particularly when those products are being exported. Lastly, I want to thank my organizing committee, the people who organized this particular committee. I know that they are among us here. Across Africa, one of the major factors that have, for example, affected crop failures is poor quality seeds. And not too many months ago, we saw failure of certain crops like maize in the Rift Valley, in some Nyanza areas, and it was all attributed to the poor quality of seeds. And the reason is because seed producers, some seed producers, let me put it that way, are not using appropriate standards in their production processes. Further, only a fraction of our farmers are trained in quality management of their crops and livestock production, resulting in serious post-harvest losses. Scientists estimate these losses to be about 30% in sub-Saharan Africa, and that is a big issue. That's a big issue. Application of standards, as we've heard from the previous speakers, will therefore help us to manage majority of the causes of a number of agricultural issues, as well as harmonize standards for farm inputs, such as fertilizers, agrochemicals, farm inputs, machinery, and agricultural processes, which include handling, packaging, storing, and of course, processing. As I've already mentioned, standards are key in protecting the consumer from harmful and dangerous goods. For those of you in the know, you would know, for example, that if we do not use appropriate fertilizers, that will be transferred into the final product that we'll be eating, and that might cause certain health issues. So it's very important that standards come before any production process commences. KEPS is at the forefront of developing standards for the agricultural industry. We have partnerships through our various technical committees with various stakeholders in the sector. We have partnerships with the Kenya Flour Council, for example, and I know that we are busy revising Kenya Standard 1785, which will take into account the recent developments within that particular sector to make sure that we open access, market access, and we increase the market access for our farmers. We partnership with the tea farmers, and indeed we've got standards on tea, coffee, cotton, the coconut from the Coast Province, etc. And therefore we are very much in agriculture. And we want to ensure that we play our part as the standardization body in helping our agricultural sector, be they the large-scale farmers or the small-scale farmers, to increase their productivity and, more important, to produce quality products that meet the specifications that will enable them to access markets. Our standards have been developed and are benchmarked with the best in the world. We don't start from a vacuum. We are members of the International Standards Organization. We are members of Codex. We are members of IEC for the engineering standards. And therefore, when we develop Kenya standards, these are standards which have heavily borrowed from international practice, and I can confidently say are as good as those international standards. To date, we've developed about 32 standards with the relevant stakeholders regulating food safety. These include what we call the Kenya GAP, i.e. the Kenya Good Agricultural Practices, which incidentally was the first in Africa. Kenya is currently, obviously, in the process of developing more standards through KEPS. So far, we've developed in excess of 7,900 standards, of which we have harmonized 1,200 standards across the East African community. What that basically means is that there are 1,200 standards out there that are common in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, and Burundi. And therefore, any products that meet the specifications of those standards get easy market access to these markets. We've gone further through the common protocols and agreed that we recognize our various standardization marks within the community. And therefore, our S mark is a recognized mark within the community, and any of our products that have an S mark get easy access into these markets. A lot has been spoken in the last couple of 2 or so hours about the need for us to work with the SME sector, who happen to be the largest employers in this market. So far, about 1,900 SMEs, actually it's not exactly SMEs because some of them have more than one permit. 1,950 permits have been issued to the SME sector. And that can be equated to products actually, 1,950 have permits. And as you've already heard from witnesses, some of these products have got their way to the export market in Europe. However, we must always realize that we are always faced with new challenges. We have biotechnology products, and these are challenges that we are facing with our key stakeholders in terms of developing appropriate standards. New technologies always come with new risks. And as KEPS, we are aware that we need to play our part to make sure that we confront some of these new developments. Ladies and gentlemen, closer home at KEPS, we've been doing a number of things to make sure that you access our services, and indeed, my Director Communication has already taken you through the SMS platform that you can use to access KEBS. We know that that SMS platform is not the best, and we are working to make sure that it becomes a lot more efficient. For example, where two products share a similar name, you only get one response back. But we are working on that, and very shortly, in the next couple of months, we are coming up with a new solution that will enable you to further confirm the quality of our products. Those of you who probably could have been interested may have noticed that we recently advertised a tender for quality marks. That is actually intended to ensure that our quality marks have security features which are difficult to counterfeit. And that will help us to do a couple of things. Number one, they will be difficult to counterfeit. Number two, since we'll be applying them on almost all imports coming into the country, we will be in a position to mitigate the menace of counterfeits, but more important, substandard goods that find their way into our country. Today was about agriculture, so I don't want to go into a lot of the other good stuff that we are doing at KEBS. I want to conclude by thanking the government, particularly the Ministry of Industrialization and Enterprise Development, for their continued support, without whom we would have been having some problems in terms of accessing government support. And therefore, our peers, I'm happy that you found time from your very busy schedule to come and join us on this very important day of the African Standardization Day.
Positive contribution to the economy of this country. Small enterprises. These are very important in Kenya. Actually, right now there is a macro parliament, a global market niche. And all these drivers will be dependent on quality.
We normally use double layer pavements with combination of unbound material at 70 proof and T53. We normally use single pavement structures with no sand base. Class 1 to traffic class 5. Now we break down class traffic 5 to 5 different classes, depending on design roads to low volume scene. There are those which introduce says reduced material specification. Then, around June,
invited guests
will be more competitive than others that do not conform to the same. And therefore, through that, this one provides global linkages. And finally, the facilitating. And finally, I want to say there are a list of various standards that have been produced, fertilizer standards in this country that have been produced. And finally, I want to acknowledge the government, KEBS, the organizing committee of this meeting, and also
2 years ago, actually last 2 years ago, one of our own from the Kenya Bureau of Standards won an AC competition on standardization globally, and he was awarded a job. I believe is a student at Kenyatta University, main campus. well done, job, very well done. He gets a prize, a certificate plus a cash prize of 50,000 shillings. He gets as indicated, he gets a certificate. He also gets a check. And I think the other thing, PS, that I would like to mention is that these are actually...
Show the certificate. Hold the phone, put the phone down.
The certificate.
Put the phone down, yeah. Thank you.